Welcome to Fragments of Rock. This time, we're going to go right back to the late 60s into the 70s. It's a moment in my life which I regret because there we were, students from Nottingham University, standing outside Debenhams, or as it was then, Griffin and Spalding, decided we were going to go on a Saturday night. The story's in the book, by the way. And I wanted to go and see Hendrix because this is a new emerging star. He had one record out. It was just about to enter the charts called Hey Joe. And my mate said, oh, well, we don't want to go down the BeachComber, we'll go down the dungeon because the crumpet's better. And so we went down the dungeon. I can't remember what the crumpet was like. It's a horrible expression. But we didn't see Jimi Hendrix, and it's a big regret.
Was Hendrix there with the Experience?
Yes, he was, yes. Although I wasn't there, remember, so I didn't see them. He was meant to be the support to Jimmy Cliff and the Shakedown Sound. But as you see from a poster I've sent you, which a friend of mine, Amy, found, he ended up top of the bill. So the thing must have charted. You'll hear the story in a minute, but the thing was, when I went to Radio Nottingham, one of the people I wanted to interview was Keith Symonds, because he booked clubs down, a lot of the clubs down along the River Trent. He booked the Beachcomber. I'm trying to think of the other club he did, which comes later on, but he was a well-known booker, but a nice bloke, a really genuine guy, and he had his heart in the right place.
So where was the Beachcomber, just for those people that are my age?
Yeah, I think didn't it become the Ad Lib? Oh, and then the lounge, the Lizard Lounge.
Oh, the Lizard. Oh, so is that near Keynes, near the Keynes Head?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, there was it. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, right. Yeah. I was in the Keynes Head the other night, so I know where you are. So yeah.
I hope you paid homage to the place opposite, diagonally opposite.
I think it's flats now, isn't it, around there or something? Anyway, so you get the opportunity to meet Keith. You take up the story now.
Yeah, so I was determined at some point during my Radio Nottingham career to interview Keith Symonds because he was such an important person, not just Trentside, but in the city for booking bands, and a nice guy as well, genuine guy. And I put it together as a sort of short documentary for, I guess, the programme Extravaganza. We started by talking about the boat club.
I don't think anybody at the boat club would mind me saying this, that the finances weren't too clever at the time, and they had ideas of making some improvements to the club, expanding it. So we had to go about raising some money. Well, at that time, the soul scene was still very, very strong with groups, not just the discotheque side. We decided to go ahead by putting on groups on a Friday and a Saturday, the soul groups, and Sunday night was going to be a blues night. In fact, I think the first group that we started with was 10 years after, a local group. Things carried on for quite a while, but I would say over the next 18 months, the soul groups definitely declined in popularity, although the soul music continued to be popular when it was played through a discotheque system. Gradually we just dropped the groups off and carried on with the Sunday night blues groups, which became rock groups, which became progressive groups, which became whatever you want to call them. And it's like everything else. We were doing well at the boat club, and then everybody decides to get in on the bandwagon. Promoters were popping up here, there and everywhere, promoting at various places. The Palais and the Albert Hall, the university were, of course, and still do, feature groups. The Tech College, Polytechnic as it now is known, they were putting groups on. And it ended up that just about every week there were 5 name groups appearing in Nottingham, and the boat club was the last one. Of course, by the time it came to the Sunday, nobody had any money left. So our attendances went down, and we eventually decided to stop it. And for a period of about 9 or 10 months, we switched completely to discotheque. Well, during this time, I think 1 or 2 other people had caught a bit of a cold. In fact, a lot of money had been lost over groups. As I say, the town had been overexposed, and it was a situation had arisen where there were hardly any groups appearing at all. So we decided that we would put them back on again, but on a Saturday night. And the reasoning behind that was quite simple, that out of our 3 nights, the Saturday night was the poorest attendance. So we decided that we'd break it and we'd put the groups on. And since then, we've done extremely well. There have been other promoters in the town, but nobody's really had a go at it in a big way, enough to cause us any trouble. And things on the Saturday scene are running very smoothly indeed.
Must have been quite a few memorable nights in these 5 years. Do any spring to mind immediately, Keith?
There's nothing that springs to mind which is actually significant, but I think what is memorable is the fact that we've had so many groups play their first, second or third gigs together as a group who have made it in the big time. I mean, Jethro Tull, we gave them their first ever booking as Jethro Tull. We paid them 25 or 30 pounds, what today would be a very, very silly fee. 10 years after, of course, we featured, they were getting to be quite a well-known group anyway when we started featuring them. Led Zeppelin, I would say it would be somewhere in the region of about £50. They did do one appearance for us. Their manager rang me up and said, this is about 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago, and said they wanted to do a tour of the clubs where they had enjoyed playing the most, and that the Boat Club was one place they'd like to play. Well, when somebody comes on and says that from Led Zeppelin, you start thinking in terms of a fee of at least £1,500, £2,000 being quoted. Well, when he told me the fee, which I can't repeat, I couldn't believe it. And they did state that there would be a set admission price, which gave us room to make just a small amount of money. Anyway, we went ahead with the date, of course, and it was a complete sellout. Very enjoyable night, and I thought it was very good of Led Zeppelin to do this. I'd rather like to see one or two other groups do this sort of thing, and I'd say this now, I think 10 years after, for one group, being a local group from, or as they prefer to be known, from Mansfield. I mean, they are a Nottinghamshire group. I'd like to see them do something like that. The most recent known groups, of course, have been Nazareth and Medicine Head, and I kicked myself there because I booked both of the groups, and they did extremely good shows. We had full houses on both nights, and I didn't get on the phone on the Monday after their appearance and rebook them. In fact, I thought, well, I'll leave it a week or so, play it a bit cool, and go back on and get another date on them. But while I was playing it cool for this week, they both popped up in the charts, and as they popped up the charts, so their prices popped up, and now, of course, they're out of the range. In fact, I think when it comes to it, there's hardly a group around today that hasn't been there. I mean, Rod Stewart, who is probably one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name at the moment, I booked him 24 times at least over the past 7 or 8 years. He's been appearing with other bands, support singer, main singer, one thing or another. There are a lot of occasions you remember, but they're all good ones.
So nothing memorable, really, you know, Jethro Tull, Led Zeppelin, for a few quid. But one isn't it nice, the idea that Led Zeppelin actually then sort of they did that as a kind of a favour? Wow, that's how I always wondered how Led Zeppelin, because I remember when you were telling me the story about Led Zeppelin playing the Boat Club, it wasn't the first times it was when they were a small group, but actually they did return as a big group, and I never knew actually that's how it happened.
I saw them on Radio 1 Club in Paris at a recording during that same tour when they were saying thank you to people. This was their thank you to Radio 1 for the push they'd given them. And again, very low charge. They were just amazing. I'd love to see them live as well. Anyway.
So that does answer, doesn't it, the question about it's always thought about it, because you know you see that chart on the wall at the Boat Club.
Yes.
How do those people get there? Like even like the Rod Stewart there. But there's a lot. There appears to be a loyalty there, doesn't it, to the clubs that set them up?
Yes, yeah. I mean, recently when they were going, Nottingham Forest were threatening to pull down those two iconic buildings, the Boat Club and the no, not the Britannia, the Union. Rod Stewart said he's going to return and take a last look. It meant so much to him. Correct. Anyway, can we move on to the BeachComber? Because I think in the documentary I moved on to the BeachComber, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah, and another big booking. So
another, a few big bookings. Yeah.
a few. Yeah, my God, it's like this is another incredible story. I mean, do you know, if you list I was down the gym the other day. We were kind of having a go at kind of the best guitarists of all time, and you're going to just listen to. There's going to be a who's who coming out in a second. No Terry Caff from Chicago, who is my number one.
Yes.
But at the same time, this is amazing interview again about the kind of how some of these greats hit Nottingham.
At one time, we had virtually all the big names of the soul era played there. We had everybody from Martha and the Vandellas, Ike and Tina Turner with the Ikettes, of course, Gina Washington and the Ram Jam Band, who were one of the finest soul bands of the day. And of course, not a soul man, but going on to the bluesy side, there was of course Jimi Hendrix, who played his first ever gig in the East Midlands down there when he was virtually unknown. There was just a few enthusiasts that probably heard the recordings of his and turned up, but it was a fantastic night. I mean, in fact, we got him on with a soul band, and I think the poor old soul band wondered what had happened. Nobody seemed interested in them. So when I booked him, I'll be perfectly honest about this, we booked him for something like £30. I was doing the booker at the agency who were handling him. I was doing this person a favour. He was a friend of mine, and he said, "Please take Jimi Hendrix. We've got to work this fella. He's coming in the office. He'll smash it up." You know, they're jokingly, of course. You know, and I said, "All right, we'll take this soul band off them." And it was Jimmy Cliff and the Shakedown Sound. We'll take Jimi Hendrix as well, and we have a double attraction night. And this is how it came about. And in fact, I went back and I did take another date on Jimi Hendrix, but after the second appearance, it was impossible to get a date on him at a fee we could afford to pay at the BeachComber anyway.
You also had the Cream on. I remember that night very well.
Yes, we had the Cream on twice again. Yes. Of course, one really needn't say what the reaction would be. It was obvious. It was fantastic. We had John Mayall as well when Eric Clapton was with him. In fact, we had John Mayall on many, many occasions. And, you know, it's very sad, really, to think that the days have changed so much. There's too much discotheque around, I think.
Do you know when he says about disco and discotheque, he mentions it all being on a, what was it? How does he describe it? I forget. It's is that it's
disco systems.
Disco system. So is that kind of is this quite a good document of kind of when live music started to go into kind of turntable kind of stuff? You know.
Yeah, and that's what happened. Of course, live music. People came along and played records, and they suddenly found out in some instances they were attracting a bigger crowd, and that's how discotheque came on in Britain.
Yeah, because that's interesting.
Clubs found it easier.
Because that's quite an interesting piece of social history in itself, isn't it? Because that's him actually documenting kind of like this. It's for, you know, recognizing actually that it's not maybe about live music anymore. There may be money in someone standing there and playing music.
I loved his idea of sort of disdain disco systems.
Disco systems, yes.
A different generation. I mean, despite all the wonderful bands he booked, he wasn't my generation. He was older, and therefore he wasn't. Discotheque wouldn't have rolled very easily off his tongue, I don't think.
So again, this is an amazing bit of history, isn't it? And people out there must have memories of the BeachComber. The boat club, I think, is quite not well documented, but it's well known about. But the BeachComber is, I think, is perhaps an area that ought to be kind of revisited.
It should be, yes, it should be. Yeah, and as you say, a plaque would be a good idea as well, to say Hendrix played here. Plus, I mean, when you think the Cream played there, I mean, the album had Fresh Cream. The album hadn't come out when they played there, or if it had, it only just come out. I mean, to me, Eric Clapton was a star member of John Mayall's Blues Breakers. Jack Bruce had been in the Graham Bond organisation, and I was going to say John Heisman. It wasn't John Heisman, but of course Ginger Baker was in the Graham Bond organisation as well.
So no, thank you for, again, another tape found in your garage, just lying, gathering dust.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I was going to say, we've got a copy of it. Yeah, there. Can for those people who like to see the tape, can we, any chance have a look at the tape?
There it is.
Back in the day, look at that. Yeah, so.
Have even when he died in, I don't know what year it was. 2012, when Keith died in 2012, I've even got his obituary from the Post.
Oh, great. Oh, that's nice.
I loved him very much.